Since the universe began, light has remained unchanged. Now, man has created a new kind of light with powers and properties unlike anything that existed before. Laser light.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the 0x2C podcast, and I'm Ryan, and this is my co-host John, and we're
Hey
back,
there.
and we're back at it again with an episode. This time on Wednesday. So usually we're on, we were doing one episode one every Sunday, but for this break, because of winter break, we have more time, and we're able to do another episode this Wednesday. And hey Sudo, thank you for typing and saying hello. Glad to hear from you. Hope you're doing well, and hope happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas to to whatever you're celebrating out there. Happy holidays. Hope you had a good time with your loved ones, family, friends. Oh, and tomorrow wait, no, I'm sorry.
It's Christmas. It's okay, Ryan. It's
Yeah.
okay. But
I'm like,
yeah, once again, happy holidays to everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this. I guess this would be considered like a holiday special, if you want to think of it that way. But yeah, make sure you stay safe and take some time with your to be able to spend time with your loved ones. Yeah. But thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it.
yep, and yeah. So, oh, and a quick, I guess news update on 0x2C podcast is we've moved our audio to Spotify and iTunes. So if you guys go on Spotify, search OX2C podcast, you'll find us on audio format, and we're still on YouTube. So we just uploaded a new video on our previous previous podcast on last Sunday, and I think that's and we created a new Instagram. So if you guys have Instagram, go ahead and hit us with a follow, and so that's where we're gonna update basically when we go live, when we upload YouTube videos, and anything else you want to add to that, John?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head here. Yeah, it's we've expanded our platforms to Spotify as well as a couple of other podcasting platforms. Although it won't be like instantly after the live session, so we still encourage you, if you can, to come to these live sessions so you can ask your questions and we can have fun kind of fielding them and talking about these latest and greatest developments. But without further ado, Ryan, I think our audience is hungry for what we have to present today.
Yeah. So today, I guess I'll be starting off since last week John started off with his article. So on today, I got a neuroscience topic based article. And so this is from the SciTech Daily by the Zuckerman Institute at Columbia University. And so the title is of this article is "Your brain has a remarkable ability to hear one's voice in a crowd, and here's how it works." So they give sort of like a nice summary of how we're able to sort of decipher whose voice we hear from a large crowd. And so let's start off with some background, some context. So I guess, John, this is a question to you. Have you ever wondered how we're able to focus on someone's voice in a crowd, or have you ever
When
happen to
you
walk
like
by someone and
when
eavesdrop?
when you first sort of gave me a hint about what the article was, I wasn't too. It wasn't a question to really consciously think about, right? It's something we do so naturally that you never really stop and wonder, how is it that we can, distinguish between all these different voices? It's almost like we're not naturally aware of how we breathe. But the moment I ask you, Ryan, how are you breathing? You instantly become conscious of that fact. So no, I cannot say that I've really thought about it all that much, or I even know anything about it at all. So I'm pretty excited about this one.
Yeah, no, and same here. I don't think I've ever stopped to think, how am I eavesdropping on a conversation, or how am I able to, if I really think about someone's voice and focus in on the convo and to hear it. Because I'm pretty sure I've done that once in my life, just to see how I could if I can just focus or something. But
And I'm sure it probably wasn't intentional either. Like you mentioned, you can walk past a crowd and you pick up individual words and sentences, but you're not doing it out of malice. It's just a natural habit.
And sometimes the voice someone's voice just sounds it's weird how it just picks up that one voice, and then you happen just to hear their. But anyways, I digress. So let's go, I guess, and talk about how the human auditory system works, and really sort of understand the background behind our ears and how it talks to our brains from these signals. So So it's a complex system, and it basically like general superficial explanation is it's going to convert sound waves to electrical signals for our brain to process. And now how it does this is that so sound waves are going to enter our outer ear, and then the signals will travel through the ear canal, and then it leads into the eardrum. And the size of our eardrum is about, I think, a dime. So like
Dime.
like I mean, like a
Okay.
little like smaller than a dime, but yeah, it's
It's pretty tiny. Like if you've, I don't know about the audience, but I used to have the habit of looking at those earwax cleaning videos. Like they're absolutely disgusting, but they're super satisfying. And you know, it really gives you an idea of just how small that entryway is.
is that on YouTube? Like earwax?
Yeah, you can find earwax
Wow.
cleanings. Yeah, I mean, like
Wow.
they're super satisfying. It's like part of your. It's like a really visceral response.
You know, I've seen
Looking at that
I've
stuff.
seen like pus when them cleaning like popping pimples and stuff, but I haven't heard of earwax. I think that's the first time.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a thing. There's a sort of a large following for that kind of stuff.
Wow. Well, so does that like oddly satisfy? So is that
Yeah,
oddly
it is.
satisfying to watch? Interesting.
There are some people who have very sort of heavily impacted ears. This is why, like it's a really looking at those videos is a great reminder why you should not use cotton swabs to clean out the insides of your ears, because what ends up happening is you push the earwax that would naturally come out further into your ear, and then eventually these people
Mm.
suffer hearing loss and other symptoms, and you have to go through drastic measures like a professional, either pumping water or some kind of liquid. I think they usually use like diluted hydrogen peroxide, from what I can tell. But it varies because different people have different kinds of earwax. You can have wet earwax and you can have dry earwax. And I think there are two different approaches to getting that stuff out of your ear.
Wow. Because I know there's a method where you use hot water. Have you used that before in your ears to get earwax?
Hot
I don't
water.
know if that's like a method or like I don't because I
I've
haven't
never seen
researched
that
it
in
out.
actual. It's always been cold. It's like a saline solution, or it's like some kind of
Right.
hydrogen peroxide. I don't personally. I don't think it's a great idea. But you know, once again, you know, Ryan and I aren't medical professionals, so this is
Nope. Far from that. um,
yeah.
but yeah. So after it sort of vibrates that eardrum, um, it's gonna from the sound waves, and it's gonna send these vibrations to these three tiny bones in the middle ear, and they're called the malleus, incus, and stapes. So,
Okay.
uh, so the malleus and incus are sort of the amplifiers, and they'll either increase the volume of the sound or like decrease it. Like if it's a really loud sound, they're trying to trying to tone it down to not damage the inside of your
Oh,
ears.
so it's like a dampener, huh?
hmm
Wow, I
And
didn't know that. Huh.
and so the stapes, I hope I'm saying it right. Stapes. It's S T
That
A
sounds
P
about
E
right.
S. Okay.
I mean,
Or
most of
stapes.
these names have Latin origins,
Okay.
so I think you're saying it right. But yeah, if anyone in chat knows the proper pronunciation, you know, by all means, feel free to
Yeah.
put that in the
Yeah.
drop a
Please.
message.
Yeah. And so the stapes is actually the so it's the last part. So the third. It's the third. I guess the third part to that. So it goes first the malleus, incus, and then the stapes. And so
Oh,
I
okay.
already said, yeah, the bones already amplify and decrease the sound vibrations. The last of the three bones, the stapes, it vibrates and it makes fluid in the cochlea, which is I like saying that word, cochlea. It's a really nice word.
Cochlea.
Cochlea.
Yeah, it's like one of those oddly satisfying. You know, some words naturally roll out of your mouth, and others like moist.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but every time I hear
No.
that word, it's like, oh, you know.
No, something's wrong. Yeah, so the cochlea moves in a wave-like manner, and it stimulates these microscopic hair cells. Really, like and they really look like just a bunch of bundled of hair, like a bundle of sticks, sort of sticking out, and they flow like hair, um, like hair in the air. And the other name, well, I guess the actual name for these is stereocilia. And what they do is from the vibration, the fluid, they basically just ride the wave, and they're just like and then these hair cells in the cochlea are tuned to respond to different sound based on pitch or frequency. So high pitches stimulate the lower part of the cochlea, and low pitch sounds will stimulate the upper part, which is kind of funny, you know. It's sort of high pitches stimulate the lower part, and then low stimulates the high part. It's like
That is, isn't it true for I just like another maybe like remotely relevant fact, but like hearing loss, right? Like, isn't that when those fibers start to die out, or they because hearing loss is like a permanent thing, right? Like so if you spend a lot of your youth listening to very loud music, that will permanently damage your ears.
Yeah, and I hope my ears have probably been damaged, John. If I'm being completely honest.
No, I think mine as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the next time I see like a oh my goodness, what's the name for those ear doctors? Isn't it eye, nose, and ear doctor, an ophthalmologist, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with the test and like, dude, like you've lost some. I mean, like, oh shoot.
Yeah, loss of hearing is. I mean, it's like I know someone who has loss of hearing, and it's just communicating. It's it's really hard, especially working, let's say, in the, I don't know, the tech field, when you're trying to communicate ideas with one another. It's they always tell me how
Oh, I
difficult it
imagine.
is, and they need different mediums too in order to communicate with other people. But and hearing aids don't really work when you reach a certain degree of not being able to hear.
Loss, right?
Yeah. So, but we'll talk more about into that. So yeah. So this part, which I just talked about, the hair cells um, flundulating, like moving with the inside the fluid of the cochlea. They generate nerve impulses, which then travel to the auditory nerve, and then from there it goes to your brain and then does all that fun stuff with that. And I guess really the one thing remarkable about reading about this and researching about this is that how fast our brain does it. You know, and I don't know if you heard, John, like about we're delayed. When
It's like a
you know.
sixth of a second, right?
Mhm.
It's a small amount of time, but it's still noticeable. Like it's still a concern. Like when you drive a car and like the car in front of you brakes, there's like a why there's a recommended distance, and why you shouldn't tailgate. Obviously, there is a delay between when our brain like realizes the car's stopped and when we hit the brake. So yeah, I am aware that our brain, despite being as impressive a piece of machinery as it is, it still suffers from certain latency issues.
Right. And yeah, but it's still remarkable how fast we're able to like respond to things,
Oh yeah,
especially
absolutely.
just in sound and seeing. Like, I wonder if they measured. I'm pretty sure they measured like the delay between what you're actually seeing versus when it really did happen. So people like to make fun of this. It's like, oh, we're always living in the past. We're always living delayed.
And some part of it is true. I mean, it definitely is. But our brain has a remarkable capacity to extrapolate. So, given missing bits of information, our brain does try and fill in the gaps. But of course, it isn't perfect. And like optical illusions, and there's certain phenomena where our brain just completely goes, it's just absolutely wrong in reflecting reality. But that's an excellent point, though. Living in the past, part of it is true.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so let's go back to the article. So, researchers teamed up with various neurosurgeon doctors from Columbia University, Irvine Medical Center, and Northwell Health. And so, from this article, for the study, researchers found patients to volunteer to listen to a recording of people speaking while the doctors monitored their brainwaves via electrodes. And so they monitored two specific parts, and these parts are found uh, in. I'm sorry. The two parts are the Hecho Gyrus and the superior temporal gyrus. Have you heard of these terms before, John?
The gyrus. Where is the gyrus?
So it's located where the temporal lobe is. So yeah. So let me.
Okay, this is the frontal lobe. I
Mhm.
know this is the frontal lobe. This is for our higher what do they call it, like planning, or like our ability for long-term planning and rational decision making.
Yeah.
You say temporal? Is it like the sides here, or
Yeah. So basically on the
wait?
sides.
No, am I right, or is that
No.
like
Yeah. I wish I had a diagram I can show, but yeah, look on the side, mid. I would say like side middle of your brain.
side? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, but so yeah, the Heschel gyrus is known to be one of the first cortical structures that auditory information gets processed in the brain and processes speech-related cues, such as learning/perceiving new speech sounds. So that's the role of the Hecho Gyrus. Hecho Gyrus. It sounds like Hershey's. Reminds you of
Is it? It's a guy's name, right?
yeah, 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 of course.
Not unsurprising. Unsurprising. I mean,
Yeah.
most parts of the brain, usually if you're the discoverer, you'll be fortunate enough to get that part named, unless it's like Broca's area. Are you familiar with that story?
No. What happened?
I think there's a clinical story that goes because Broca's area is like responsible for speech or your ability to communicate. And I think there was a historical incident where a patient came in and he suffered an injury. I think a key or some piece of metal got lodged in that area, and doctors found out that he couldn't communicate properly. And that's how they kind of named it after. I don't know if it was the patient or the doctor, but Broca's area. You can, for those curious, you can go look that up. And feel free to drop in chat like if it was the patient or the doctor. I learned this in AP psychology, so it's been quite a many years since I had to revisit that story.
And okay, and so these two, Gyri, right?
Guy,
I think it's Gyri, like right?
guy, I don't know.
Because like octopus, octopi, Gyri.
Well, right, but that's like a
Gyri?
different Latin. I think different roots have different plurals, but I'm not certain on that aspect.
But these are basically found also I guess in the auditory cortex. So that's like the yeah. And so I guess sort of this I came up with a question like why is it so hard to study the auditory cortex, like what makes it hard about our brains that we still haven't been able to figure it out, right? So
Right.
so the one of the doctors on the article said this nice analogy that I thought I'd share, that studying how, so is Dr. Garani. He's an associate professor of electroengineering at Columbia Engineering, and he says this: studying how the auditory cortex sorts out different sounds is like trying to figure out what is happening on a large lake in which every boat, swimmer, and fish is moving, and how quickly, by only having patterns of ripples in the water as a guide.
Oh wow, that's a wonderful analogy because when you are using those electrodes, right, you're only picking up like I would assume like the external activity. You can't really. There's no sort of fine tuning. Like I can't choose which physical part of the brain, other than like the surface layer, as you mentioned, the sort of ripples on the surface. That's a wonderful analogy. And you say this is an electrical engineer that's working on this kind of neurological study.
Yeah, and yeah, I was bringing that up. Like it's crazy. You see EEs working in like this type of field, like, and it's nice to see that conjunction of different majors, different fields, I guess coming together and solving, like, I guess researching this kind of stuff.
I mean, that's like, especially these days, interdisciplinary research is inescapable. It is a necessity for, new research and new discoveries. But that's really cool, hearing that we've got an electrical engineer working on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's using those circuits. The circuit 2 classes, circuit 1 classes. But anyways,
What was that op amp we learned about, the differential op amp? Like
yeah,
there's
there's one, yeah, the differential op
a
amp.
differential. Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's all kinds of them. There's like the summing amplifier. There's
Right,
the
right.
differential one that you brought up. There's even there's a name given to one of these op amps that we had one of our problems. I don't know if you remember.
We'll remember it later. I don't think we need to.
True. Okay. And so yeah, and then let me talk about the superior temporal gyrus. I almost skipped over that, but it contains it's responsible for processing sound. Specific sound frequencies map precisely onto the auditory cortex. So yeah, and I'll go more into the HG, which I'm going to use as an acronym: HG for Hecho Gyrus and STG for superior temporal gyrus.
So there are three gyruses, or plural, three of these gyri.
So I'm only talking about two of them. So the Hecho Gyrus
Okay.
and the superior temporal gyrus. And so now, yeah, so from the actual study, so they found that the Hecho Gyrus is able to separate the different voices from their different frequencies. So that's what they found from that study. And the STG, or the superior temporal gyrus, forms an auditory object. And do you want to guess what like an auditory object is?
An
John?
auditory object.
Yeah.
So it sounds like one part almost does like this kind of Fourier transform thing, and then you're saying audio object. Is it like just like a I don't know a sequence of electrical pulses in the brain, or it's like it's just some kind of it's literally some kind of biochemical template, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, I think it's even simpler than that.
Oh,
so
okay,
yeah,
wow.
but maybe those processes are involved. But it's which I have it here, which is the mental representation of the sound being heard, and is the one, and so the SGG is the one that selects from the different frequencies which voice it wanted to target. So so an auditory object is what like when we hear a guitar playing, we'll think about, okay, we sort of have a mental representation of what a guitar looks like, and we so that's what I guess what does that clear that auditory object?
So is it almost like there's a pre-made template in the brain, like it tries and because you say mental, you say an audio object. So I'm assuming there's like a frame of reference in our brain that's capable of distinguishing these different voices, right?
Right. Correct. Yep. And
Okay.
so yeah, the STG, and so according to this article, it happens around 150 milliseconds, which is almost instantaneous to listener. Which when it recognizes that target voice, so
Wait, so remind me again. So what are the two parts? So we have the HG and the STG, right?
yep,
So it goes to the HG first, and then it goes to the STG.
yep,
And the HG is responsible for the filtering. Like it picks up those unique frequencies in different voices, right?
mm-hmm.
And then the STG does like further sort of processing, or the mental or audio image is what you mentioned, right?
So yeah, it's the one that actually like selects. Okay, that's the target.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of like the demultiplexer, huh?
I guess. Yeah, I guess so.
The
Yeah,
demux.
yeah,
Yeah, the demux.
yeah. That's a good circuit analogy. And okay. So now that we've like talked over this study, so what are we going to use this for, right? I guess that's we do all this
Right.
research. What's the
What's
point?
the application?
Right. So, so this finding could help develop algorithms for hearing aids and help replicate this artificially. So, being able to sort of better understand how the HG and STG work together to be able to better, I guess, create hearing aids that are able to target certain frequencies or certain
Oh, wow.
targets.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I'm willing to argue that the mechanism you just mentioned is sort of like the evolutionary equivalent of something like a Fourier transform. Like how you go from the frequency domain to the the time domain to the frequency. I think that's our brain's natural way of doing that. Like all these different voices have unique kind of fingerprints. That's super cool. Wow.
And it's crazy. We do this like almost like instinctively, right? We
It's at 150 milliseconds, right?
Yeah, we don't have to write down the formulas like, oh,
right.
S+1, convert this into
sines and cosines, right?
Yeah, I guess as our brain has evolved, it's just being able to do these things like instinctively, right? So, and we're struggling over here like on our tests. Oh man, how do we do what our brain does perfectly like day to day, but we can't write it down on our paper.
Right. What was I? Oh, it's funny you mentioned this kind of biological mechanism. There was an article I had, but this was like back during podcast 2. So this is episode 5, right? Or is it 4? This is 4, huh?
I lose track of numbers now.
Wait, no. Hold on. I mean, I have the thing here. It is okay. It's episode 4. It's episode 4. But I think when I was doing research for episode 2, I came across some research showing that amoebas, so single-celled amoebas, can actually run the traveling salesman's problem. So in computer science, this is a very it can run it in near linear time.
Wow.
This amoeba, the amoeba can find the necessary paths, whereas computers, even the most efficient algorithms are nowhere near that kind of level of efficiency. So
right, and I think I saw that with mold too. I guess is that sort of the same brand?
Yeah, it's a fungus. Well,
yeah,
no, not mold. Well,
I don't know. Maybe.
That particular article was about an amoeba, but I know what you're talking about. There is a fungus. I don't know. I've seen it a couple times on YouTube that does it displays an extraordinary degree of what we might consider it just looks a lot smarter than it should be, especially for a fungus. So
Right. And I mean, fungi are their applications also in recycling. I heard, at least I think I read an article about they're using fungi to create
or
household
like processed plastics,
appliances.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like our brain and that amoeba, I mean, those are over millions of years of evolution. So nature has slowly optimized, these living things to excel at what they need to do to survive. So that's I think that's absolutely phenomenal.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the we'll give them that they have millions. I don't know how many years, but on us. That's my only excuse.
Right, right. That's true. I mean, I don't think we'd be willing to wait, a million years to optimize something, but nature has had the time, and I
Hmm.
think I forget the name, but there's a whole field of science that is absolutely dedicated to like literally mimicking biomimicry. So we learn from nature ways to optimize things in our real world. For example, the bullet train systems in Japan. I'm pretty certain those actually learn from birds. They took a specific bird species and they modeled the train's nose after the actual bird because they had problems where when the train goes through a tunnel, it's super noisy and it's
Hmm.
not really efficient. So in order to minimize that, we learn from nature, which has had once again millions of years to optimize these species for their prime survivability.
And that reminds me of, I think Japan or some country, they're also using fungi. I think what we're talking about to map out the closest way to get from point A to point B in a city.
Oh
So
wow. Okay, so who knows? Maybe in the future, our phones are going to have like a dedicated fungus chip in them or something.
that'd be interesting. Or they'll
Because I
name
know
an algorithm after
um,
a fungi.
that amoeba that I was telling you about. I looked at the actual research paper, and what they actually ended up doing was they built a circuit that modeled the amoeba's behavior. But it almost sounded like they almost implied, and I might have misread this, that they put the amoeba, like I would imagine you can have an amoeba on like a bunch of electrodes, and you can set up different configurations and let the amoeba kind of live time, figure it out. But uh,
Oh,
that might be my imagination. I'll have to review that article again.
but
But I think our audience has had enough learning about biomimicry. We're just Ryan and I are both very like we're having a kind of geek out moment here because it's such a phenomenally fascinating thing. Just all this nature around us to have optimized some of these problems that we have spent decades trying to figure out ourselves. It's definitely right. Cool. Sounds good. So I think some of you from the title could already get the idea that I'm going to be talking about a recent development in terahertz radiation. So Ryan, if you had to guess where terahertz radiation lies on the sort of electromagnetic spectrum, so you have like really sort of long radio waves all the way to like say high energy X-rays or gamma radiation, where would you say it sort of lays on that spectrum?
so
Terahertz
Terra
radiation.
is 1,000 what? Like is
I'm
Terra
not.
from converting? Okay, because
Well, okay, a terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes,
so
right?
it's 1,000 terabytes, right? Wait, no.
Wait, no.
Oh,
So
oh,
a
these are
gigabyte,
terahertz. Okay,
right?
never
In
mind.
terahertz, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Uh,
If you had a
I would
guess,
say
where would you say that kind of?
radio around there.
So you're saying it's near radio waves? Well, it's a bit off. It's between microwaves and optical radiation. So
Oh,
between like what our eyes can see and microwave radiation, and sort of bordering infrared, that is sort of the terahertz region of radiation. And
okay.
just
Wait. Quick
providing
question.
some
Quick question.
context. Yeah, go
The
ahead.
microwave is found at what hertz?
Uh,
Or like,
I didn't write the actual number down,
okay, okay, that's fine.
unfortunately,
Yeah,
but
yeah. But
it's in that neighboring region, the terahertz radiation. So the reason why I kind of brought it up is because there's been like a pretty interesting development here. But I think I think I should give some context. Like, why do we care about terahertz radiation? Like, what's good about it? What are
mhm.
the uses? So I don't know if you heard about this, but there's an idea called T rays. So normally we have X rays, right? Which are used to sort of do internal scans and figure out the underlying structure behind things. But the problem with X-rays is they're ionizing radiation. So Ryan, I don't know if you've ever had like an X-ray taken, but there's like, you know how like doctors have a limit for patients, right?
You're talking about limit for the number of times they can visit, right? Like, say a dentist, they only can have like two, I don't know how many visits, but per year because of the
Uh,
radiation.
Not visits so much. Well, yeah, okay, there you go. The amount of radiation, right? Like doctors have to be cognizant of like, okay, has this patient had X number of X-rays within the past week or month? And that becomes kind of problematic, right?
Hmm. Right, right.
So um, basically, the idea behind terahertz radiation, though, is that it's non-ionizing. So when I say radiation's ionizing, like it's going to start affecting molecules and your DNA. You know, it actually starts to bombard and break down that molecular structure. Not with terahertz radiation. It's a lot safer to work with.
Oh, wow.
So instead of X-rays, we call them T-rays.
Okay. Huh.
So that's one application. There's also a security benefit. So I think some police agencies have started to experiment with this as well as the military. But the terahertz radiation can penetrate cloth, but it gets blocked by like metals or non-metals as well. So if you had like I would say a knife made purely out of plastic, the terahertz radiation would pick it up, whereas an X-ray scanner might miss the plastic weapon.
Okay, so it's able to go through like very thin material, or
Yeah,
but then
yeah.
metal, it can't go through. So could it go?
Depending on how you tune it, yeah.
Oh, okay, I see, I see.
Because X-rays have like I would argue that X-rays go a little too far, and you miss certain targets you're looking for. But with terahertz radiation, you can actually tune it in such a way that like plastics or certain non-metals will come up as well. And explosives even have a special terahertz fingerprint.
Oh, huh.
So, you know, if you had like an explosive material on you and I used like terahertz based radiation to scan you, there's a unique fingerprint for different kinds of explosives. So I could be able to like, just like that, I could tell like you're, you know, harboring some kind of explosive. So that's
I see.
definitely another one of the.
So they use
Uh-huh.
it in military, I'm assuming, right? Police.
Yeah, it's been gaining a lot of traction. Like right
Okay.
now, the technology is in its
Oh,
infancy. Because
cool.
terahertz radiation is really hard to generate. Like it's surprisingly difficult to pull off.
Oh,
And
okay.
the last application
Uh-huh.
that I wanted to give is that terahertz frequencies are a potential candidate for 6G.
Whoa. 6G.
Yeah,
I
6G.
hadn't looked into that or like read about it.
So we're just like beginning with 5G, but a lot of
Right.
people, some people are saying like you can transmit more information faster with this higher sort of frequency. So
Wow.
so terahertz might be the way of the future. Very well could be.
6G. I mean, how much G's can go up? 7G, 8G.
I don't
Is
think
there
there's a
like a
limit,
cap?
but of course, so I think there are two parts to it. One of them is like the transmission frequency. So,
Mhm.
you know, like how much information can I cram in a certain unit of time? But they also use different encoding schemes, and they find ways to um, cram more information per each encoding scheme. I'm not too familiar with how those schemes work, but I am aware, like 2G to 3G to 4G, this encoding scheme is responsible for being able to carry more data in one transmission versus, say, older generations.
Okay. Okay. And in order to generate these T hertz, how do you know how they're able to? I guess the instruments they
So
use.
normally they've from like I haven't looked too much into the exact instruments, but they it's always like some massive laser or like a particle accelerator or you know like it's a really exotic setup. It's not like how our cell phones have like the built-in transmitters and that's super easy to you know generate an existing signal.
Mhm.
But for terahertz radiation, it's this really intricate setup. Yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Okay. Wow. So yeah. So it's like you said, it's I guess in its baby stage. But
Yeah, it's in its infancy.
it
That's
has
true.
promises in um, military, police, field, and what are some other like fields that can potentially?
scientific, a lot of research when you have to because terahertz radiation has the opportunity to give some higher resolution images we've never seen before with normal microscopes.
Okay.
You can get like much better detail and clarity with more imaging. So if you're in the material sciences, if you study biology, that's definitely a huge plus, is that increased resolution from this sort of new range of frequencies you can work with, this terahertz radiation.
Oh, I see. Wow.
So it's you actually touched on a great point, that it's really difficult to generate these terahertz frequencies. But there's been a recent development from a research group from Spain and Germany, I think, and they have managed to find a way to make it a lot easier to generate these terahertz frequencies. So let me go ahead and kind of tear that apart real quick.
Let's go, John.
So this was presented in the ACS Nano Journal. So this is by a German-Spanish research team. So once again, you see that overarching theme in the sciences, right? Ryan, you mentioned we had that electrical engineer, but this is like a almost multinational sort of interdisciplinary research thing. It's really cool seeing this kind of stuff happen with the real-world sciences. So this is mainly done by and this is kind of a bit of a mouthful, this is the Helmholtz-Zentrum-Dresden-Russendorf HZDR research lab.
Wow.
Ryan, before I go any further, have you heard of graphene? Do you know what graphene is?
I heard of it. It's some type of, I guess, material they use in things that I can't remember off the top of my head. But what are they? How does graphene touch on this story?
So graphene is core to how they pulled off this this sort of terahertz generation scheme. But I think it'd be good for the audience to get like a little context. How does that sound, Ryan?
Yeah, let's do it.
So normally, graphene is really nothing more than a really thin layer, maybe just a couple hundred atoms, maybe or less than that. Like ideally, it'd only be an atom thick of carbon atoms. So imagine I have one carbon atom here, and each carbon atom is in this kind of hexagon, and they're all sort of bordering each other. So each carbon atom has 3 bonds, but carbon atoms normally have 4 electrons that are available for bonding, which means I have a free electron. And that free electron is incredibly useful in terms of graphenes being used for capacitors, for storing long charges, transistors, and a number of other electronic components. Graphene is very ideal for that kind of stuff. So it's a very thin layer of carbon atoms that are all bonded together in a hexagonal fashion. That's graphene for you.
Cool.
So going back to the article here, the idea was that this team, this HZDR team, found a couple years back that if you take graphene and you irradiate it with light pulses in the low terahertz frequency range, the graphene will naturally convert it to higher frequencies. Graphene acts as a frequency multiplier.
Oh, wow.
Which is great because I told you it's really hard to generate terahertz frequencies. So if we can get a lower frequency and pump it up to a higher frequency, that's great.
Right. Okay. Go on.
So the idea, what they did, the problem with this method though, like even though graphene has this property, is you still need like a massive laser or some kind of accelerator to generate the original low terahertz frequencies. So they came up with a new idea where you take the graphene and you coat it with what they call lamellae. And lamellae, this was probably from the article itself. This was by SciTech Daily. Mm-hmm. Lamellae is more of a biology term, but they use it here in material sciences. It's kind of interesting. It's a thin layer of stuff. And in this case, it's a thin layer of gold they put the graphene on. So they have glass, and then you put the graphene on the glass, and then you put aluminum oxide, and then you put the gold on top. So it's like a little sandwich almost.
And it covers the graphene.
Yes, it covers. Okay. The gold is the important thing here because according to, Klaus-Jan Thielruij, I hope I'm saying that right. So he works with the collaborating laboratory from the Catalan Institute of Nanoscience and Nanotechnology. the lamellae actually acts like an antenna that amplifies the radiation that the graphene receives. So by sandwiching the graphene with this gold foil, we can actually get the same amplification, like the frequency multiplier, but without the need for such such intense radiation.
Wow. Okay. So, and I guess does graphene? I wonder if graphene would have like if it could explode, like under these high frequencies. Like,
I don't know about the combustibility of graphene,
like
although that is a fun question. But
sound,
in fact, I'm not like I wish I had. I think this paper was paywalled. It might have been, but because I can tell you like what they discovered, but more often than not, I think you and I, as well as the audience, are a little more curious about the mechanism, right? Okay, so why is it that this ultra thin layer or sheet of carbon can produce this kind of behavior? So I wasn't able to figure that out, but this is something that they recently discovered. And basically, what they did was they found out after doing this is you can get the same output with a much weaker signal. And they also found out that the more gold you put on it and the less graphene you expose, the more the multiplication. So originally they doubled the frequency, and then later on they got it to like 7-fold or even 9-fold increases in frequency.
Wow.
So no, go ahead.
That's a lot of like amplification on that graphene with all those.
I think it's better to say like multiplication because they're increasing the frequency. So it's higher. The amplitude, I think, the amplitude might stay the same, or it could potentially diminish. Like I wouldn't be surprised if you're pumping it through this graphene. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's some kind of signal loss. But the real exciting thing, and the heart of the article that I wanted to get to you and the audience, is that this kind of technology, this lamellae-coated graphene sheet, is compatible with existing semiconductor technology. So the stuff that we have in our phones and in our computers, this graphene material can integrate with that nicely. So we may not need a massive laser anymore. Like, so terahertz related radio technology is almost within our fingertips. It's a huge step towards making it more accessible for people like you and me, for the average consumer.
Because I mean, lasers, they're pretty pricey, right?
They're incredibly pricey, and some of them are massive. Like, I don't know, you've seen pictures, right? Like in a laboratory, like that thing will probably take up many more times the size of my existing room right now.
just to shoot a little beam of electrons out.
Right, or a very precise wavelength light. Yeah, it's got to be super finely tuned. But with this technology, because if we can multiply the frequency, that means that I could potentially start at like a gigahertz frequency, which is way easier to pull off, and then get a terahertz frequency out of it. So I can start low, do that irradiation at photon or that light-based irradiation, and then I can get a higher frequency out of it.
That's nice. That's like super nice because you start low and then you can just add on to it,
Yeah, exactly.
The more frequency you need, just add on to it rather than it being you start at a really high frequency, pricey, right? But then not being able to, I guess, what's the opposite? Divide. Because you multiply it, now you can't divide it. So, yeah, that's I can see how it would be more cost efficient.
Oh, considerably, definitely. Graphene is not that expensive to make either, because I mean, like, I think traditionally when they were doing research with graphene, if you take something like pencil lead, and you I don't know, if I were to take this sticky pad here and go ahead and really kind of scribble it in here. So now you see there's like this little patch of graphite, and I take Scotch tape and I put it on here and I peel it off. And you kind of repeatedly do that. That was originally, I think, how most scientists began research with graphene. But later on, we have methods of growing much more refined graphene these days.
Interesting. Wow. Do you happen to know off the top of your head, like, where else they use graphene in?
So I mentioned supercapacitors. So
Okay.
so in certain like that's being researched as well. I think transistors as well. So it might be an up and coming replacement for silicon, which is exciting because silicon is we're already pushing the boundaries with existing chips like silicon transistors in terms of speed and size and power consumption and quantum computing. Um, there's been news recently of some more recent research of using graphene to make I think certain uh, uh, it, to sort of make qubits or to use them to help facilitate making qubits. Yeah.
Okay. So in order to make qubits, John, how do you go about doing that? Do you have to use a laser in order? Like, what?
Ah, okay. So Ryan's touching into home territory for me. If you guys look at the about page on Twitch, most of you know that I have some expertise in the area of quantum computing. So the interesting thing, like you mentioned, how do you make a qubit? And there's actually no one answer for that because a qubit is nothing more than I always put it this way: it's any object that can satisfy two sort of quantum criteria: superposition and entanglement. So traditionally, like in the very early days of quantum computing, and it's still being done today, you do ion trapping. So I get some metal. I think they use like either ytterbium or maybe something else, but you get a gas, like an ionized gas,
Mhm.
and you put the ion in a magnetic field, and you can use that as a qubit because it has like a certain spin
Oh
to it.
wow.
That kind of inherent property, spin, because you can do entanglement and superposition with spin. But you can also do it with photons. That's another way to do it. Photonic quantum computing. For those of you that have been following the news regarding China's kind of recent declaration that they sort of they have the most powerful quantum computer, I would take that with a pinch of salt. But that is a Gaussian boson sampling. I'm not going to give too much detail for this particular um, episode. But hey, if chat if
Yeah.
chat is interested, we could do an episode totally, on quantum computing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm going back to a qubit. Like I'm trying to say, like there are many different ways you can do it. There's no one proper way to make a qubit. A qubit is nothing more than a kind of quantum system, and there are many ways you can have quantum behavior. So it's not just individual ions.
Okay. That's good to know. What's the time right now? I think it's
I
it's
think
57. Yeah. So
yeah, so I think we are nearing.
is that like the last sort of bits to your article, John?
Yeah, I would say like I guess the big take home here is that that terahertz technology is up and coming. I mean, it's
Right.
we've seen this kind of development, and I'm really looking forward to what they can do with this. So yeah, so this is also kind of a materials based thing, but I think we should start with Ryan. What do you know like about how a catalyst works? How familiar?
Okay.
How much chemistry do you still remember from high
Oh
school?
man, the catalyst is what I guess sparks the reaction to occur. Um,
Well, in some cases,
in, s-
yes.
in some,
In some cases, yes.
otherwise, yeah. In the other cases, like when it does something different. But man, I remember from bio, even in bio, like learning about catalysts, different catalysts uh, pr- they'll do different things. Oh man, I'm trying to remember. It's funny. This word always triggers my memory into Snoop Dogg, and his Mac and
Why
Devin go
Snoop Dogg?
to because the Mac and Devin go to high school movie. Have you seen that movie?
No, I have not seen that movie at all.
But
I have no clue what you're talking about.
so Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa, they're high school students, John, in this movie. They're high school students, and they Wiz Khalifa is like a really smart chemi guy, and then Snoop Dogg is kind of laid back, chilled. And so towards the end of the movie, they're trying to find this catalyst in order to create energy from doing this really funny experiment, and so they do it, and then he has a song that has like catalyst, so it always triggers my. So when you say
Oh,
catalyst, I first think of Mac and Devin go to high school.
oh my goodness.
But yeah, go on,
Well,
John.
so I think for audience, even if the audience does know what a catalyst is, I think it's great to kind of get a real idea of what the nitty gritty of a catalyst is. So when a chemical reaction occurs, there's sort of like an energy barrier that has to be
Oh,
overcome
that's what it
for
is,
those
John.
bonds to be
Energy barrier.
broken
Yeah.
and then reform. Because that's essentially every chemical reaction, right? Like you have your reactants, the bonds break apart and then they reform into new compounds. That's pretty much any chemical reaction you can think of. But what a catalyst does, that's really nice, is it lowers the energy barrier, which makes certain reactions go faster, or certain reactions sometimes don't even happen. And you need a catalyst to actually get it to go in some kind of feasible amount of time. And the way a catalyst does that is it provides this kind of weak surface that the molecules are prone to break apart first and attach to the surface of the catalyst. And on the surface of a catalyst, it takes a lower amount of energy for those atoms to recombine and make your new compound. So that's a quick review of what a catalyst does. Oh, and one more important detail, catalysts are not consumed in a reaction. So that means like if I don't know, maybe we're making cookies, and I don't know what kind of cookies need this, but maybe there's a palladium catalyst I'm using to bake these cookies. And I know these are toxic cookies, but basically when I'm done with that first batch of cookies, I can make another batch and reuse the palladium. The palladium itself doesn't go away. It's just a binding surface for those compounds.
Great. Yeah, that reminds me now that when you say lower the activation.
Yeah, I think the proper term is activation energy or energy barrier. I mean, I call it an energy barrier in case our audience has people who may not be as inclined towards chemistry.
Right.
So this is a pretty recent publication, and it came from Tianchun Xiao. I hope I'm saying that right. It's kind of embarrassing considering I'm like I can speak Chinese, but when I have to read certain names, I kind of butcher the pronunciation. So I think they are a chemist at the University of Oxford, and they came up with an iron-based catalyst. It's iron, molybdenum, potassium that converts, and get this, Ryan, it converts carbon dioxide into jet fuel.
Wow. Is it that simple?
Well, I mean, once again, we're getting this news from the news has already simplified the research paper, and now we're taking it one step further. But occasionally, I'll go back to the original paper, and I'll interlace details. So I'll take parts of the paper, and then I take the article, and I kind of weave it together so our audience can get a much better picture of what's going on.
That's pretty cool.
So in the past, there were attempts to get this kind of carbon dioxide into some other useful fuel. So before I go any further, why do you think carbon dioxide is such a pain in the butt to convert into a fuel? Like what is it about CO2 that makes it hard to, say, convert back into a gasoline that a car could use?
Well, cars, when they use gasoline, it goes to the exhaust and comes out as CO2. Now,
they combust it.
Yeah, to convert it back is you have to do the reverse of that, which
you're not wrong. It's more like the actual structure of carbon dioxide. It's like two double bonds. Carbon dioxide is a very, very stable compound. It does not want to react unless you really force it to.
And carbon has 6 atoms, right? I mean, 6 atoms. Has 6. Whatchamacallit? On the periodic table, it's like 6. I'm blanking out.
Oh, you mean valence electrons? I thought it was 4.
I'm sorry, 4 valence electrons.
Carbon has 4 valence electrons because I just remember talking about graphene, right? Yeah. Those 3 of those electrons go to bonding with the other carbons, and then you have 1 free electron, just kind of for graphene. In diamonds, it's different. Diamonds, you actually have each carbon atom with 4 other carbon atoms. So so graphene's very kind of crumbly. Like if I took this thing here, and I were to I can rub it off on my thumb. You can kind of see the little sheen from it. Whereas diamonds, you rub a diamond, you're not going to lose any carbon atoms. So
okay.
But yeah, so part of the reason carbon dioxide is so much of a pain in the butt for chemists is because it doesn't want to react with anything. It's like a noble gas. It just simply doesn't want to be bothered. So before this catalyst, there was already research into converting carbon dioxide back into fuel. And you can imagine, Ryan, like why people want to do that. Like when we burn fuel, CO2 is responsible for a lot of these greenhouse gases, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not the only greenhouse gas, but it is like a real pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can find a way to take back that carbon dioxide and turn it back into a fuel, that's like really nice. It's like it's a
cycle.
a combo.
Almost,
yeah, it's a
like
combo,
it's like
right? Because
recycling it.
right, you get rid of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and you have fuel, so you can still burn that stuff for transportation and what have you.
Okay.
Yeah. So prior attempts at doing what I'm about to tell you now is that for like jet fuels, are you familiar with like what hydrocarbons look like, Ryan?
Not off the top of my head.
But like hydrocarbons are just like carbon and hydrogen, right?
Right.
Hydrocarbons. So in nature, like usually hydrocarbons like to form chains. So you can have like really short ones, like methane's only one carbon atom, and then you can have like other really long ones. And sometimes they're not just chains. Sometimes they like to branch out as well. And for jet fuel, we need longer chains or just more carbons per molecule. And the problem that a lot of scientists originally had with trying to use catalysts to convert carbon dioxide into fuel is that the resulting products have too few carbons. It's too little. Other methods weren't single step. Like this method I'm telling you right now, you could do it in one go. Previously, some research focused on like, okay, we're going to take the CO2, we're going to convert it into something else, and then we're going to convert that something else back into, all of your other stuff, which is like, that's a waste time and resources, right?
Right. There's multiple steps to that, and then
yeah,
just doing one step. And as you do those multiple steps, you're increasing like things that can go wrong, or
right, exactly. You efficiency, right? You lose efficiency. There's like more steps that ingredients can leak out. In the original research paper, I don't know the exact method, but one of the complaints is it uses a lot of water. Like there's one process that used like a boatload of water. It was just totally infeasible for practical usage. But for this method, what they did was they had a reaction chamber and they set it to 300 degrees Celsius, and they pressurized it to sort of 10 times the air pressure at sea level, and they put the CO2 in and the catalyst, and then over I think it needs hydrogen as well. So over 20 hours, the catalyst converted 38% of that CO2 into new chemical products in just 20 hours. And 48% of those new products are jet fuel hydrocarbons.
Wow. So it did 48%, you said, or 38?
38% of the CO2 in 20 hours. In 20 hours, it got converted into new chemical products. And then in those products, 48% of them were jet fuel, hydrocarbons.
Oh, wow. So almost like 50%, almost half of it.
Right. The other stuff is actually still useful. There's still hydrocarbons you can use to make plastics, which I'm not a big fan of, just because plastics are terrible for the environment. But you're still getting use out of, carbon dioxide that was previously discarded. I'd call that a win.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. Wow. And where are they researching this one more time, John? I forgot.
This is at the University of Oxford.
Okay. Wow. That sounds,
And
just being able to recycle things like CO2 from our atmosphere, I feel like is a big step into the future.
Oh, definitely. And one last, I think this is one extra piece of good news, is the byproduct is perfectly harmless because it's CO2, right? So it's one carbon, two oxygens. So the oxygens just bind with the hydrogen. So your byproduct is water. That's it. It's, there's no harmless, there's no harmful ingredients left over. It's just water.
Wow. And who doesn't like water?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, water's not going to kill anything. So it's really good news.
Oh, that sounds really hopeful for the future, especially with all the CO2 being emitted and the whole, we got to take that out of the atmosphere. And if we can do that, recycling it, I think that's the best way to go. Reusing what we've previously used in order to fuel, I guess, our rockets or things that are going to be going elsewhere.
Yeah, jet fuel.
Fuel, or in our planes and all that stuff.
I think my concern though is this is like really economical, but how economical, right? Because you have to heat it to 300 degrees Celsius. The pressure has to be 10 times that of sea level. And then to top things off, you need hydrogen gas. So hydrogen gas, Ryan, how much do you know about the hydrogen fuel economy? Have you heard that term before?
Not so much. Please educate me, John.
Or hydrogen fueled cars? Have you heard that
I
news
heard
as
of
well?
that. I saw an article about like hydrogen fueled car, but there's
Right.
not
So
that many being like made. At least.
yeah, I mean the huge debate is you need to find a way that you get sort of more energy than you put in, right? Otherwise, what's the point? So hydrogen is there are a number of ways to produce hydrogen by electrolysis. So I don't know if you've done that experiment where you take water
Sounds familiar.
and you stick the electrodes in, and then like one electrode, the hydrogen gas accumulates, and another electrode, the oxygen accumulates. So electrolysis, or maybe bacteria, but either way, you need to produce a large volume of hydrogen, and hydrogen production is crucial to those hydrogen-powered cars. And a lot of people are arguing that maybe we're not there yet. Like it just simply isn't economical to produce so much hydrogen with current technology.
Right, and I mean, I guess that sort of shows as to why we don't see any like hydrogen cars made is because of that fact.
Right. Well, I mean that and market demand, right? Like
Yeah,
I think just now I'm willing to argue that because of efforts from Tesla, a lot of people are like, wow, electric cars are like the hip new thing. Like
Yeah.
every cool person drives an electric car. But I don't think it's the same yet with hydrogen. So,
Yeah.
not to mention the sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say electric cars have been here too.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah.
And I would argue like the infrastructure for electric cars is already around us. Every home has an electrical outlet. You just have to install that like the wall charger, but that's not too difficult. Like there's electricity wherever you go in the world. Like there's always like an outlet, not to be found pretty close by. So I'd argue that's really helpful. Whereas hydrogen gas, I mean, you think about it, you got to have the infrastructure in place and safety. Like safety, right? Like, what's the one downside of hydrogen gas you can think of?
I think of blowing up.
Yeah, precisely. Hydrogen is
Like a hydrogen
incredibly
bomb.
flammable. Well, H bombs are a little different, right? Like how they work, right?
Not so quite. I don't think I've really read into like how hydrogen bombs work. All I know
So
is.
it's.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
think from what I remember is like there's. It begins like a normal nuclear bomb. So there's the initial explosion inside, but then they coat the exterior has like hydrogen, or it's some kind of other. Shoot, is it hydrogen? But fusion happens, like, and then there's like another. It's like it fuses hydrogen, and the energy released from the fusion is used again to make like a third kind of explosion. That's like way bigger than just a single nuclear bomb, because the initial explosion gives the pressure and the heat that you need for nuclear fusion to occur. That's an H bomb.
I see. So the hydrogens are just used to like diffuse to get to a higher, I guess, explosion.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh.
It's just like you instantaneously for like a split second you have nuclear fusion. But yeah, hydrogen is not a great thing to work with, because but the potential for flammability is definitely a concern.
Right. But the thing is with Tesla is that let's say you live in the middle of, I don't know, like the mid countries of the U.S.
It's like the Midwest.
Yeah, the Midwest. Thank you. And what are you gonna do if you run out of electricity? I don't think there's a close plug by the canyons. That's like the only
true,
downside I
but
see of electric cars if you live in the Midwest, obviously.
But I mean, that's like where Musk kind of gets his opportunity to shine, right? Like he's like, oh, you don't have electricity. Why don't I sell you solar panels and power banks? So that way you'll never run out of electricity.
That's true.
But Ryan, have you heard like lithium batteries aren't really that great for the environment?
I see articles about like lithium batteries, how to make them better, how to make them more, I guess, ergonomical or like to benefit the environment. Yeah, go educate me on that one too.
So lithium extraction is not really a very environmentally friendly procedure. There are a lot of toxic byproducts that come from extracting lithium. And Ryan, you're right. I mean, I have seen some of those articles as well. Cobalt, right? Cobalt electrodes, or there was actually a report that came out that showed like a lot of certain medical hospital, not medical hospitals, medical schools, med schools are finding out that students, when they need to learn surgery, right? So you're holding a scalpel and it's a really, really precise incision. What ends up happening is students don't have the flexibility because they're holding, like for the majority of their lifetime, they're holding their phone like this.
Really?
Yeah, like
So
it
it's almost like
actually
a muscle
has a
memory.
long term. Yeah, and it's a bad thing because
Oh
as a
no!
surgeon,
Wow,
you need, and
precise.
some teachers or professors are saying like we have students that can't do certain things because their hands are like permanently kind of like morphed or stuck in that phone holding
Yeah,
position.
that reminds you. I was on the internet and I was reading someone had like 7 hours of time on their phone. Like you know how I guess Apple sends out how much screen time you have,
Right,
and so
right.
yeah, I guess people that are on social media like a lot 7 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. I'm like, wow,
Well,
that's.
was it on their phone like for a whole day, or was it like just social media, like 7 hours per day? Because
I
I
think
think
just
that would
being
be
on their
extreme
phone.
for anyone.
I think just being on their phone in general.
Well, that time really adds up. Like, I mean, if you think about it, we're not really aware of like how attached we are to our, mobile devices, right?
But I think it's like per day. I don't know. Maybe
Per day.
yeah,
Okay.
like per day. 10 hours on your phone. Usually I'm on my computer. Like I'm not gonna like say that I'm not connected to the internet. I'm on my computer, but like on my phone, I'm usually like maybe 2 hours a day. I mean, yeah, like average about like 2 hours a day. If I watch YouTube, watch Netflix, or if I watch I don't know, if I go on
No,
Instagram.
same. I mean, I always have like music playing in the background as well. Something to kind of calm my nerves or get me in the mood to study. Okay, Pseudo says my daily average on my phone is 4 hours, but I will wake my phone up and set it down while on my computer, so it will count a lot of. Oh, okay. So yeah, those
Interesting.
statistics might not be entirely accurate.
That's true.
That is an excellent point, Pseudo.
Yeah, but what were we talking about again? We
Oh
hydrogen.
yeah, yeah, hydrogen. Yeah, I was talking about like or lithium, right? I
Oh
think I
yeah,
was talking
lithium.
about
Right.
lithium isn't as like lithium batteries are not kind of like the end all solution. They have like this terrible environmental side effect. Although, Ryan, how much do you know about sort of asteroid mining? Like, have you heard the news? Like, there are people or organizations that have proposed that idea, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they done it. Like,
Well,
have they tried
I
implementing
don't.
it? I
I mean,
doubt I have.
technically they have
I know technically.
Hayabusa,
I know, right,
Hayabusa 2, right?
right. Well, I think when I think
So
of like mining, I'm thinking of like huge chunks of the asteroid. Like bringing back
yeah,
big
yeah,
chunks, big
you
boy
got like a
chunks.
massive drill, and you go in there and you got to extract all those precious minerals and metals. I mean, right now, I guess you technically could pull it off, right? I mean, Hayabusa 2 managed to, but it's not easy. Like I think the problem with that like asteroid mining is the profitability, because it's really expensive to build and design the satellite.
Yeah.
It's even more expensive to get the thing, off of Earth and into space. So,
I mean, yeah,
uh,
it's even difficult to be able to have a team that will calculate every precise calculation to get that on
right,
the asteroid. You're not gonna
right,
have like
absolutely.
a startup just be okay. Let's create a company to go asteroid mining, and they're
I
gonna
think
yeah. I
what
don't
would have to happen is like you have to have like a remote, like a floating space station or something, and
right.
people will stay like maybe around this asteroid belt for a long period of time because you want it to be economical. So you don't want as many trips. So ideally, you'd like get all the resources pre-processed, and then you like send them to Earth in one instant.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Like having, I guess, satellite stations where you could stop by, sort of refuel, you know, and then be able to, I guess, and like in the future, be able to do those big mines.
Yeah, definitely.
Or the other
Have you
thing would,
ever
oh, like, or the
have
other
you ever
thing
seen
would
the
be like,
movie? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm sorry. I should. Ryan, you should. Go ahead.
or
Go
what if
ahead.
there's like, we just do this all drone based, where we just send the drone, but I think that's costs a lot more money. I don't know, costs a lot of
In the
more money.
future, it might be cheaper. Who knows? I
Yeah,
mean, this kind of technology gets cheaper all the time. I mean, that's how scientific advancement works. Like
right.
technology gets faster, smaller, cheaper. More bang for your buck. Absolutely. So who knows? We don't know.
But yeah, what were we gonna say?
I wanted to ask if you've seen the movie Alien.
Yeah, I think I have. Is Alien with the like the predators, or is that Alien versus Predator?
Uh, that's Alien versus Predator, but there's like the OG movie, like Alien.
I may have. It's been a long time since if I would have seen that movie.
There's the alien that comes out of the egg and it like attaches to the guy's face.
Oh no, I haven't.
Oh, you have?
That was
Okay.
too
Okay.
scary for
Well,
me when I was.
yeah, hey, watch it. I mean, we're
Now
on
I can
break.
watch it
We're on
probably.
break, dude. Go
Yeah.
ahead and I think it's a great. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is because the actual ship that the protagonist is on is a mining ship in space. In space, like it's carrying a bunch of ore,
Mhm.
maybe not from Earth, but like from like another planet or potentially asteroids as well. The USCS. I forget but it was like the Nostromo. I just remember it's like a random detail. But I love that movie. I think I've seen it like multiple times, as well as Blade Runner. I love that movie a lot.
I saw
Oh,
Cowboys versus Aliens.
a reanimated Nat says good movie. So I'm glad to have another fellow Alien fan with us as well. I adore that movie.
Yeah, I only seen a bit of Alien versus Predator. I saw Cowboys versus Aliens. I don't know if you saw that movie.
Cowboys versus Aliens. I'm vaguely familiar with it. Although that's a really visceral movie, right? Like they do experimentation on humans, right? And like
Yep.
that I felt that might even be arguably more visceral, like you just
Yeah.
feel more disgusted than Alien. But
No.
then again, Alien's got like a literal alien bust out of a guy's chest, so it's subject to taste.
Is that from that famous scene of like literally the alien coming out of the guy's chest and it's like super like weird looking and it's like pink? I don't know.
Pink. I
Or
don't
like,
remember if it was pink. I think it was white, but
or maybe it was white. I don't know.
I'll have to. You know what? This stream is a good reminder that I should rewatch Alien. So
This stream is a good reminder. I need to rewatch movies. I haven't seen
yeah.
a good movie in a while. Oh, I don't know. Shows. I've been watching shows like a bunch of anime.
Bunch of anime. Oh,
Like,
okay.
do you-
Ryan's inclined towards. I haven't really watched much of anything. I've been playing Stardew Valley.
Hey.
It's a cute game. It's super
Yeah,
wholesome.
I heard it's really good, a good game.
I
Maybe.
think in all of our lives, like especially for any of you college students watching, or if you're in a job, it's always like, oh, get this done, at this deadline, or you're fired, or you're gonna lose points, you're gonna fail this class. And Stardew Valley kind of reminds you, like, rushing everything is not like that's not what it means to live, right? Like, sometimes it's healthy, it's necessary to take things slowly, to learn to just kind of let go and do as you please. But I think that was my take-home message because I played Minecraft before Stardew Valley, and I would go crazy on Minecraft. I'd be like, day one, okay, I need to get diamonds. I'm gonna get like this massive farm going. I'm gonna get these redstone machines going. I would have this massive and crazy intricate setup in the first day. And
Right.
but Stardew Valley, I'm like, oh, I have to like budget. I gotta plant these seeds. It takes days, and it just teaches you patience. And it's a wholesome game overall. I really love it.
Yeah, no, Minecraft is like, I remember, I mean, just Minecraft, like, once you start learning the game, because at first I was sort of like, okay, gotta get these trees, and then, gotta make a house. But then after you start learning the game, you start to create a new world, you go straight into, gotta get the tree, gotta make the pickaxe, gotta start mining, gotta find diamond,
Now
gotta go to the
everything's
nether.
gotta go like fast. Yeah, like you don't have patience for it anymore. But see. If you like the efficient side of Minecraft, you should look into Satisfactory. Great game, huh? Well, thank you very much for the recommendation, Pseudo. I will have to look into that. Although, fair warning, I'm not really like an intense gamer. Ryan, I think you can attest to that. I play very casually, but
Like Stardew Valley is pretty
um,
casual.
yeah,
It's definitely not
definitely
like League
started.
of Legends or
No,
Overwatch
no.
or
I think I
Dota.
tried. I tried Counter Strike. In general, I think many of my friends and colleagues can test. I'm terrible with first person shooters. Any tips on
Oh,
how to be more patient with things? See, I'm a casual gamer myself. Okay, Pseudo says he's they're a casual gamer. Okay, that's
do you want to answer that question, John?
anything on how to be more patient with things.
It's a hard
Why wait
question.
why are you asking me, Ryan?
I don't know. I want to hear what you say.
I think how to be more patient. I mean, there are certain scenarios where you just cannot, like there's always some pressing demand, or I think
Oh, you know what trained me to be patient?
what
Going
working with
shopping.
me.
Funny joke. No, silly. No, for me it was like shopping with my mom, like as a kid.
Oh my
That
goodness.
really taught me patience. Um, actually, okay, to be real, like for real, uh, I guess like talking to my father, like because he's hard of, he's pretty on the scale of like he can't really hear that well anymore. So just being able to like communicate him growing up, uh, learning how to, because boy, man, you have to repeat like 5 or 10 sentences over and over again. Um, but I don't know. I guess for me, it's sort of you just gotta you just gotta remind yourself that like, oof, I don't know, like it's weird. Like, how do you even teach someone how to be patient? You know?
I think it's patience. I think I've always thought of patience as kind of like a muscle, right? So how do you grow muscle? You have to exercise, um, exercise that muscle. In terms of like, you can try meditation. It doesn't really work that well for me.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
but I know that's like a go-to route, and Pseudo I think has an excellent point here. So I think it's a really broad question. Are you wanting to be more patient with unexpected situations, or build patience with situations that you have to endure? I feel patience, and Pseudo's not wrong, but I think behind all those scenarios, there's like some kind of underlying tenet as to what patience is, and I think
Dude,
I don't know. I think for me, like being raised in a fully kind of Chinese family and Chinese household, patience is an integral part of what in Confucian philosophy we consider this filial piety. So it's this sort of respect towards one's
mhm,
elders. So that's just something for me. You kind of raised into. It's by default, it is expected of you.
right.
And I think for me, it might even be disadvantageous. I've had some of my Western, those that are raised in a sort of more Western environment complain, like John, if you want something, just go for it. Like be more
Right.
assertive, and that's not who I am. That's not, that doesn't really line well with a lot of the Confucian philosophy. But that's oh, and Pseudo here has something. Doing things that make you impatient is definitely a great way. Forcing yourself into it will make it more muscle memory. Yeah. So once again, you try and practice patience with things, and I think like from Stardew Valley, like you just find some time to take a break as well. And learn like it's okay to not be productive at times.
Hmm.
Life is not meant to be this. You know,
Rushed.
yeah, right, exactly.
You gotta enjoy the
Ryan,
moments. Right.
yeah,
And I would say one thing is also to take yourself out of perspective from your own perspective. So, for example, like just thinking about right now, let's say you're impatient and you're mad over this like this really one thing that you're probably going to forget in the future. That's sometimes what reminds me of, okay, instead of reacting so quickly, which I have and I know I have, um, it's sort of just taking yourself out and like, okay, this moment in time, like it's gonna go over. Next week, I probably will forget about what just happened, and then sort of like allowing yourself to slow it down. A lot of times I feel like I like to be like in the heat of things. I like to rush things a lot. Um, I think John can attest to that. Like I like to
Yeah,
when I'm
definitely.
in that zone, like I want to like get it done. I want to like get it out. But John has like he always rhymes like, yeah, you know, sit on the idea or sit on what you're doing. Think about it a little bit before you act, you know, or I don't know.
Right. I think what Ryan is saying is a really great like if you wanted for anyone who's like interested in more concrete stuff, look into Stoicism. Stoicism is like it's sort of a kind of philosophy or a way of life where um, it gets misattributed because when we think of the word stoic, we think of someone who's like emotionally distant or they're not emotionally affected. But that's not the meaning of Stoicism. Like the idea behind that philosophy is to kind of, as Ryan said, take yourself out of the situation. Like you look at it from above and you just keep pulling yourself further and further, and you realize how ephemeral certain things are. And by ephemeral, I mean like it's not a permanent thing. As Ryan said, like, eventually you'll forget about this, and time will pass, and it may not be immediate. That's true, but the time will come where it becomes nothing more than a memory. Or sometimes when you're impatient and you wonder like, what was the point of rushing this? Like there was no benefit to rushing something. Things like that. And Ryan and I could be talking out of our butts for all we know. This could so take whatever advice you find is useful, and feel free to discard the rest. Now, with that being said, Ryan, I think we are going overtime. I think we're 5 minutes overtime.
Right.
So I think we should just go ahead and conclude it here.
Okay. Yeah, you know what we can do? We could have you heard of rating a channel, John?
Oh, you wanna rate a channel?
Should we rate a
I
channel?
think why don't we say that for Sunday? How about we say that for Sunday?
All right. Well, yeah, but thank you everyone for joining in on today's podcast. Um, again, I guess a quick for anyone that didn't hear, we're on Spotify, iTunes. Quick shout out to Spotify and iTunes, and we're on Instagram. So, for if you want to stay more connected, follow us on Instagram. See what we're up to, what things might change in the future. But yeah, John, do you want to say anything?
Once again, thank you so much for being part of the sort of Zero XQC podcast, and for your wonderful interaction and questions. We appreciate it very much, and we're always happy to sort of bring once again the latest and greatest in science and technology. So, and before we leave, wishing you all very happy holidays. We genuinely hope you get the time to celebrate with friends, family, and loved one, even though the current conditions make it difficult or near impossible for many. But yeah, we still do hope you get that opportunity, and don't forget to stay safe.
Yep. Stay safe, everyone. All right.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Bye.
All right. Good night. Bye.